My name is Diane Mercer. I was 32 years old when my father reduced me to a punchline at my sister's restaurant anniversary dinner, smiled like he'd paid me a compliment, and raised his glass to a room full of investors, regulars, and food bloggers who had watched our family build something from nothing. He said, "I want to toast the woman who made Copper Hen what it is today. My daughter, my firstborn, my business partner." He looked at my sister with the kind of pride that fills a room. Then his eyes slid toward me, still smiling, still comfortable, and he added, "And of course Diane, who makes sure our filing cabinets never run out of folders." The table laughed, not meanly, the way rooms laugh when they assume the joke was approved by everyone involved. My sister's boyfriend clapped my father on the shoulder. One of the investors, a man in a sport coat who'd never once learned my last name, said, "Every operation needs its back office, right?" More laughter. My sister caught my eye across the centerpiece and gave me the small shrug she'd perfected over 30 years. The one that said, "You know how he is, don't make it a thing." I picked up my water glass. I didn't set it down hard. I didn't excuse myself dramatically. I sat with the laughter until it moved on to the next toast, and I stayed through dessert, and I drove home alone on the highway with the windows down even though it was cold, because I needed the sound of something honest. Here is what nobody at that table understood about the filing cabinets. I was the regulatory compliance coordinator for my family's 3 restaurant locations. That title meant nothing to people who equated value with being seen. What it actually meant was that I held every license, permit, certification, and government relationship that allowed those restaurants to open their doors each morning. The liquor licenses, renewed annually, and tied to a specific health inspection cycle. The food handler certifications for every employee across all 3 locations. The fire suppression inspection records. The grease trap cleaning logs that county inspectors pulled without notice. The zoning variance documentation for the outdoor patio at the 2nd location that my sister had expanded without fully reading the approval conditions. The vendor contract renewals. The payroll tax quarterly filings. The certificate of occupancy amendments every time my father decided to move a wall or add a prep station without telling me first. My sister brought in the crowds. She had the face, the Instagram presence, the instinct for a dish that made people feel like they'd discovered something. My father had the charm and the handshakes and the story of building something from a single griddle in a strip mall. I had the paper trail that made all of it legal. They had never once asked me what would happen if I stopped. 6 weeks before the anniversary dinner, I had emailed both of them about the annual liquor license renewal for the flagship location. The renewal required a completed health inspection sign-off, updated owner attestation forms, and a $400 processing fee submitted to the county clerk by the last business day of the month. I had flagged it in our shared calendar, attached the forms, and noted the deadline in bold. My father opened the email and did not respond. My sister read it and sent back a thumbs-up emoji, which I had learned over years meant she had registered the information and placed it in the category of things Diane will handle. 3 weeks later, I followed up. The attestation forms required my father's original signature, not digital, not scanned. The health inspection sign-off required my sister to be physically present at the walkthrough as the owner of record. I needed both of them to do one specific thing each, and I had been clear about that in every message. My father sent back, "Can you just handle it? Kind of slammed this week." My sister didn't respond at all. The week of the anniversary dinner, I sent the final notice. The deadline was that Friday. The forms were still unsigned. The inspection had not been scheduled. If the renewal lapsed, the county would issue a temporary suspension of the liquor license pending reapplication, which carried a processing window of 4 to 6 business weeks and a reinstatement fee 3 times the original renewal cost. I attached everything again. I outlined exactly what would happen and exactly what I needed from each of them. I included the county clerk's phone number. Nobody answered. That night at the dinner, after my father made his joke about filing cabinets and the investors laughed, something settled in me. Not anger. Not the hot, urgent kind that makes you say things you regret. Something quieter and much more final. I had spent 8 years being the person who absorbed the consequences of their inattention so they never had to feel them. I had forged ahead on things I wasn't supposed to handle alone because waiting meant disaster. I had called county offices and sweet-talked inspectors, and once, genuinely, shown up to a licensing board meeting with a correction package while my sister was being photographed for a local magazine spread. I drove home that night and opened my laptop and looked at the deadline. Friday at 5 p.m. It was Tuesday. I did not submit anything on their behalf. For the first time in 8 years, I did not step in front of the consequence. I drafted one final email. In it, I stated clearly that the liquor license renewal for the flagship location would lapse at close of business Friday if the attestation forms were not signed and the health inspection not completed and logged. I attached the county notice, the original renewal packet, and the reinstatement fee schedule so there would be no surprises. I sent it to both of them, CC'd the restaurant's accountant, and put my phone on the charger face down. I slept deeply for the first time in months. Friday came and went. I know this because I was in the middle of a certification renewal for the third location, the one they'd opened 18 months ago that I had been quietly steering through its first full compliance cycle. I filed that paperwork. I attended that inspection. I answered those emails. At 5:02 p.m., the county system logged the flagship location's liquor license as lapsed pending renewal. At 5:04, I received the automated suspension notice to my work email as the compliance contact of record. I forwarded it to both of them without comment. Then I went to the grocery store and made pasta and watched a movie and felt something I hadn't expected to feel. Nothing, not guilt, not satisfaction, just quiet. Saturday was a holiday weekend. The flagship location ran 2 seatings on Saturday nights and had a full reservation list. My sister had specifically promoted the evening on her social media as a special anniversary event with wine pairings. The first text came at 6:47 p.m. It was from my sister. All it said was, "Why is the system flagging our liquor license as suspended?" I was washing dishes. I read it. I set the phone down and finished washing the dishes. At 6:52, Diane. I have 80 covers tonight and the server just said we can't pour wine? At 7:03, my father called. I let it go to voicemail. His message was not calm. He said something had gone wrong with the license, that the staff was confused, that guests were asking questions, and he needed me to call someone at the county and get this fixed tonight. His voice had the tone of a man who had never truly believed that a consequence could reach him on a Saturday. At 7:11, my sister texted, "I had to tell the table in the corner, their wine pairing is off the menu. These are the investors from last week. Diane, please." At 7:38, my father called again. This time, he left a longer message. Slower. He said he wasn't sure what was going on, but something must have gone wrong with the renewal, and he knew I handled these things, and could I please just make some calls? Not, "I'm sorry I ignored your emails." Not, "I know the deadline was Friday." Just the assumption that I was a resource to be activated, same as always. At 8:15, my sister called and I answered because I was tired of my phone vibrating. She asked what happened. I told her exactly what happened. I said the renewal required her presence for the health inspection and my father's original signature on the attestation forms, that I had sent those requirements 4 times over 6 weeks, that no one had responded, and that the license had lapsed as the county notice had said it would. There was a silence on her end long enough that I could hear the noise of the restaurant behind her. "You knew this was going to happen," she said. Her voice was not quite accusatory. It was something worse, disbelieving. Like the idea that I had watched something approach and not jumped in front of it was a violation of some law of nature. "I knew the deadline was Friday," I said. "I told both of you the deadline was Friday. You could have called me." I sent 4 emails and 2 calendar reminders. I asked for 1 signature and 1 hour of your time. Another silence. Then, "This is a really bad night to do this." "I didn't do anything," I said. "I stopped doing everything." She hung up. The full weight of what the lapsed license meant took a few more days to fully arrive. The Saturday night loss was visible and embarrassing, but the deeper problem surfaced Monday morning when my sister sat down with the numbers. A liquor license suspension on record affected more than the weekend service. 3 weeks earlier, without telling me, she had submitted a loan application for a fourth location. The application had used the restaurant's clean compliance history as a primary supporting document. The bank's commercial lending officer had flagged the county's suspension notice over the weekend, because financial institutions monitor these things. The loan was placed on hold pending explanation. My father called me at 9 in the morning. His voice had shifted overnight from outrage to something thinner and less certain. "The bank called your sister," he said, "about the loan." "I know what compliance holds due to loan applications," I said. "You have to call the county. Get the reinstatement started." "I can start the reinstatement process today. The fee is $1,200 and the processing window is 4 to 6 business weeks. I'll need your original signature on the new attestation forms, and I'll need your sister to schedule the health inspection as the owner of record. Same as before." Quiet. "We also need to address the second location's outdoor patio variance," I said. "The annual confirmation filing was due last month. I've been waiting on the property survey your father pulled without logging it properly. If that lapses, the patio seating capacity on the permit drops from 40 to 12 pending re-review." More quiet. "There are also 2 vendor contract renewals for the flagship that I flagged in February and have not received authorization to sign. And the fire suppression inspection for the third location needs to be scheduled before end of quarter or we lose the green tag," my father said. "How long has all of this been sitting?" "Some of it months. Some of it longer. I have documented every reminder I've sent." He did not say anything for a moment. Then he said, "Why didn't you push harder?" That was the sentence. That was the one that clarified everything. I had spent 8 years pushing hard enough that they never had to feel the resistance. Pushing had looked like covering, like preempting, like doing their parts when they wouldn't. And the question, "Why didn't you push harder?" assumed that my job was not to manage compliance, but to manage them, perpetually, without acknowledgement, without thanks, and apparently without enough importance to merit a real answer at a dinner table. "I pushed 4 times, I said. "I think the question you're asking is why I stopped absorbing the consequences of you not responding, and the answer is that I got tired of being the filing cabinet." He was quiet long enough that I thought the call had dropped. Then, "That was a poor choice of words at the dinner." "It was," I said. "I didn't mean it as an insult." "I know you didn't. That's the part that's hard to forgive." He asked if we could talk in person. I said yes, but not that day. I had 3 compliance items to begin processing, and I needed to triage by deadline urgency first. He said okay. His voice had the unfamiliar texture of someone who has just discovered that the floor they trusted was load-bearing after all. My sister came to my apartment that evening, without calling first. I opened the door, because she had driven 40 minutes, and because I recognized the look on her face. Not the composed professional face she wore when she was managing a situation. Something plainer and more tired underneath it. She sat at my kitchen table, and I made coffee, and she looked at her hands for a long time before she said, "I had no idea the loan application was tied to compliance records that directly." "Most people don't," I said, "until it matters. I should have responded to your emails." "Yes. I always assumed you'd just take care of it." "I know. I made it easy to assume that." She looked up. "Why did you stop?" I told her about the anniversary dinner. Not the whole room, not all the laughter. Just my father's words, and the way he'd looked at me while he said them, and the way she had shrugged. She closed her eyes. "I've done that for years," she said. "It wasn't a question. Made myself feel better about the gap between us by treating your work like it was smaller than mine." "Your work isn't smaller," I said. "But neither is mine." She was quiet for a moment. "The investors were at that table when Dad made that joke. The same investors the loan was going through." "I know. And you still didn't step in." I looked at her. "Would you have, if the situation were reversed?" She didn't answer. That was its own answer. What happened over the following weeks was not dramatic in the way I had sometimes imagined consequences would be when I let myself imagine them. There was no single breaking moment. There was only the slow, unglamorous work of repairing what had been ignored. The reinstatement application went in. The fees were paid. The health inspection was scheduled and my sister showed up on time without being reminded, which I noticed. My father signed the attestation forms the same day I handed them to him, also without needing to be chased. The bank's hold on the loan was explained and partially resolved, though the processing timeline pushed back by nearly 2 months. My sister lost momentum with the fourth location and had to have a harder conversation with her investors than she'd planned. She handled it. She is, genuinely, good at what she does. She just needed to understand that I am too. The patio variance was filed. The vendor contracts were authorized. The fire suppression inspection was scheduled. All the things that had been sitting in my inbox waiting for their attention moved forward in the space of 2 weeks, once they understood that I would no longer do their parts for them. My father took me to lunch. Not to a restaurant my sister owned. A diner, a booth, a table with mismatched salt and pepper shakers. He didn't make a speech. He wasn't that kind of man, and I didn't want a speech anyway. He said, "I didn't understand your work." I think I was afraid to understand it because understanding it meant admitting how much of what we built runs through you. I asked him why that would be something to be afraid of. He thought about it. Because then I would have had to treat you differently, and I didn't want to have to change how I saw things. It was honest. More honest than I expected from him. I told him that. He said the anniversary dinner comment had been a throwaway line. The kind that feels harmless when you're comfortable and slightly drunk and surrounded by people who are laughing. He said he genuinely had not realized how it landed until I repeated it to him on the phone 2 days later. "That's the problem," I said, not unkindly. "You could only hear it when I said it back. I couldn't say it without it mattering." He nodded. "You got that from your grandmother," he said. "She said things once and meant them." I always took that as permission to not listen until it was convenient. I thought about that for a long time after lunch. My sister's apology came in layers over weeks. She started by asking my opinion on a vendor she was considering, actually waiting for my answer instead of having already decided. Then she stopped introducing me at industry events as my sister who does our back-end stuff and started saying our compliance director. Once, at a casual dinner with some of her chef friends, someone asked how the business ran so smoothly across 3 locations, and she said, without hesitation, "Because my sister makes sure we're never operating on borrowed time." I didn't make a big deal out of it. She wasn't performing it. She was just telling the truth for once. The loan eventually went through. The 4th location opened 8 months later. I was the first person my sister called when the lease was signed, not to ask me to start the permit process, though that too, but to tell me first, before the investors, before her boyfriend, before the Instagram post. Me first. There is something I want to say to anyone who has ever sat at a table where someone they love made them small and called it a joke. The work that holds things together is never the work that gets applauded at the dinner table. It lives in the folders and the calendars and the quiet mornings when someone shows up before anyone else and does the thing that keeps the machine running. The people doing that work are not background characters. They are the reason the story is still happening. I did not blow anything up. I did not make calls to sabotage anyone. I did not leak documents or contact investors or scheme from the shadows. I sent emails. I noted deadlines. And one Friday afternoon, I stopped doing the extra step. The step where I went around the people who ignored me and fixed the problem before they had to feel it. That is all it took. Because the gap between what I was doing and what they thought I was doing was the size of everything. If you have ever been the one who reads every page before signing anything, the one who catches the error before it becomes a crisis, the one who gets looped in only when something goes wrong and gets forgotten the moment it goes right, I want you to hear this clearly. Your work has weight. Your work has consequence. The fact that it runs quietly is not a sign that it doesn't matter. It is a sign that you are very good at it. Stop making it so easy for people to forget that. So tell me, have you ever been the invisible one holding something together? The person everyone relied on without realizing it, until the day you quietly stepped back and let the silence speak? Tell me where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. I want to know how far this story is traveling.